why don't we'll get going here. We're super excited to be doing this because this is a first, I think, for the Regan team, and probably needs to be done more often in other companies and other industries. So I thought I'd just start a couple things off with some context for a second. So I'm Matthew Regan, and I'm the CEO of Regan Real Estate and the head coach, if you will, of the Regan team. We're a residential real estate business based out of Mississauga, Oakville, and Burlington. And in 2019, we helped a lot of families to the tune of over 200 million in sales volume. And I don't say that to brag. I'm saying it to try and put some context into what you're about to hear. And we run a pretty big company. It ranks 9th on the Toronto Real Estate Board for volume out of just over 50,000 agents across the Greater Toronto Area. And we rank 6th based on net profits, or gross profits rather, gross revenue. 6th out of 18,000 across Canada for Royal LePage. And why am I telling you all this? Because I'm telling you this because there's a lot of moving parts, and what people see on the outside isn't what actually happens on the inside many times. So kind of without further ado, I think what I'll do is I'm going to introduce Rosa Viviano. And Rosa came to us. How long ago, Rosa, did you jump into the confines of working at the Regan team?
Oh, at the Regan team, it's been 4.5 years.
4.5 years, and you're kind of a seasoned veteran in real estate because you've got a fairly extensive background, if my memory serves me right.
Yeah, over 15 years in real estate now. I've lost count.
15 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So Rosa is our broker of record. She runs the show. She's got her pulse on almost everything within the company. And we're going to come back to Rosa here in a minute. And then our director of sales is Allison Addison. And I like to joke with people that Allison is besides my mother, like my longest standing working relationship. Allison, how long have we been working together?
10 years.
10 years. You've put up with me for 10 years.
Yep. That's a whole other episode.
Right. And Allison comes loaded with experience. And again, we'll touch on it as we go here, but everything from admin to running an office to one of our top sales reps for years to now into a new role within the past 2 years within our team as our leader of director of sales. And when this all came about, when I was reading an article in the paper and how companies really lack leadership and in the management positions from women. And my blood was beginning to boil because I've got 3 nieces, I've got 2 sisters, I've got my mother, I've got aunts, and I've got a lot of friends that are female. I'm going, it just seems so bizarre to me, or it just seems so off. And I thought what we would do is pull 2 of our senior leaders, 2 of our senior management people in our company together, and we'll have a discussion about what it's like to be at the helm of a pretty, a medium-sized business, and what that balance looks like within the work confines at home and, a personal life. So Rosa, maybe we can start with you. Like, who are you, and what's the responsibilities like at work? And you've got some amazing new responsibilities at home. How is that going for you?
It's wild. And so 2.5 months ago, I gave birth to our first child. It's a baby boy named William. Haven't stopped working. Haven't been able to separate myself from my other family at the Regan team. It's definitely a challenge. You're never alone anymore. I have this one on my lap now. The other one's in his swing. But I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been wonderful. I am enjoying it every second. I'm so happy to have a team that's very supportive. It makes juggling a lot easier, but there's definitely a lot to juggle.
In a working day at the Regan team, like what does that look like? Like, is this how many hours are you putting in say an average day at an average given time of year?
Yeah. So now with having a newborn at home.
Well, maybe even prior to that, just to give the audience some context of how your life, like what your life looked like before a baby William came along and now post William.
Definitely a big difference. Not having any children at home, I was able to spend every minute of my day working. Didn't even think twice about it. You have your commute going to the office. You're at the office 9 to 5. You don't have to worry about what's going on at home. And then once you're back home, however I wanted to work it, I could, check in my email, see what's going on for the next day, get a little head start. I was able to manage my own time, basically. Could take some extra calls, didn't faze me at all. That's a life of broker of record. Real estate is a 24/7 job. So you do have to be available at any time. Things happen regardless of what's going on in your own personal life. So, and that's the type of support that is, our team needs as well. So it also is what strengthens the team, is to have, somebody available to, bounce any questions off, strategies, just, anything really. So that's what life was like before a child. I didn't even think about how much time I was putting in. It just was happening naturally. So post William is definitely a whole different, or, having a baby at home is, I don't know how to word it, but, your own time comes second, right? So in order to balance, you realize something has to give. So every day is different. You can't plan it anymore. Some days I can give, 2 or 3 hours, and some days I can give 6 to 8 hours. It all depends on, how long he's napping, if, he's having a great day. I have to either give up showering or, a healthy lunch or something like that, in order to balance the day. So just every day is different. I have no idea what it's going to be like or how much I can give. And again, it goes back to having a team that's also supportive. So when they do call, I can send a text saying, I'll be able to call you the next 15 minutes. If it's urgent, call Allison. If you need Anne, again, because of the support, I'm able to make that balance. And most of the time the team will say, oh, no problem, just call me when you're free. I couldn't do it. Yeah, I couldn't do it if I didn't have that opportunity.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you. And I have a feeling we'll come back to that word support as we go. Mm-hmm. And that's a great intro. Thank you. And then Allison, kind of over to you. I mean, similar to Rosa, you've been in the industry a while, and no doubt you could write a book on some of the things you've encountered in your career. And I guess, how does your day look like? Like, what does it look like? And what are some of the tangibles, like the hours you put in, and but also maybe more importantly, are you able to share like the intangibles, the emotional, anytime you're dealing with people, if you've dealt with people, if our audience works with people, we know that we're human beings, we're all different. There's no two people alike. Like, how do you go about the emotional balance and the workload balance, and then kind of the balance as it when you call it a day, when you call it a day and you go home to your family, what does all that look like?
In the current position that I'm in?
Yeah.
I just want to say when I first saw the invitation to this, and I saw, the the work-life balance and having it all, I kind of snorted to myself, like, okay, work-life balance. That's very fluid. It's not static. And because I've been an agent, I understand that side of it. Excuse me. I understand that side of it. And now being more in admin and supportive, it allows me to understand what agents are going through as well on their day-to-day. And just because of my age, I'm a fair bit older than everybody else. And I've gone through, you know, some of the sexism and different things. I've seen a progression. So it's a lot easier for me now, I find, because I can sort of see the process of everything I've gone through. I don't have young kids at home anymore, so I've gone through all of that. But what I've gotten out of this, using the technology that's available now, I can do things from home. I can turn things off if I want, but I also have the flexibility to answer something. If somebody needs something, you know, in the evening, I can certainly do it where it doesn't have to be 9 to 5, but it's a lot easier for me structurally, and emotionally. Yeah, it's tough dealing with people sometimes emotionally because things are very important to them and they've got to be dealt with quickly and responsibly.
You oversee, Allison, like roughly, not oversee, but you work in conjunction with about 15 sales associates, and they're busy and they are productive and they've got a high level they have a high expectation for themselves because their clients have a high expectation of them. Like, how does that kind of filter into a management role where, you know, you went from only really having to worry maybe about yourself, but now you kind of, you're basically helping, in a very simple word, you're helping these people progress in their careers, advance their careers, and ultimately it filters down to helping the client. Do you feel a sense of responsibility? What does that look like? What does that feel like?
Sure, I feel a lot of responsibility as a woman, and we have a lot of women on our team. There's a lot of struggles that go along with that, as far as trying to, you know, work-life balance for them and what that looks like, and also just, you know, being there to support them and with advice from things that I've seen and you know, some answers for them, how to help people be productive, maybe things that I've learned along the way that we put in systems in place here, just try and make sure that people have the tools that they need at their disposal when they need them. Yeah.
Allison, you used the word a few minutes ago, sexism, and you know, if I just can kind of get this out there, I think you've been in the industry 25 years, give or take a couple years. I know you're only 37, so someone will have to do the math, but all kidding aside, like you brought up sexism. I think of the time duration from when you would have started to today. Is it easier to be a woman in the workplace? Is it harder? Is there any nuggets, any lessons learned? Because sexism is still there today. I think we all know that. What can you elaborate?
Yep. When I started, I graduated university. So I grew up in the 60s, 70s. I graduated university in the 80s. And the outlook for women was really a lot of them there to get their MRS degree, which I had no idea what that was. And it was like, you're misses, you're there to get married. And that was widely accepted. And getting into real estate when I did, it was, there were women there for sure, but there weren't a lot of top producers, I would say, that were women. And I'm only going to speak to residential real estate because I think that's probably come the furthest. Commercial real estate, they're really working on it, but it still is very male dominated. Residential, I think you have a lot more ability because you're not dealing with the structure of corporations still. you have a less of a barrier, I guess, with sexism. The having it all, you know, that came out, I think, in the 80s when it was very impressionable on me, and we were all trying to have it all, and it's exhausting. Not everyone wants to have it all. So residential real estate, you can get into it if you want to just supplement an income and have more of a flexible schedule. If you want to become a high performer at a much higher level, I think that you have more ability to do so in residential right now because you don't have those sort of the barriers that people still have in corporations. You know, even when you're in commercial, you're often dealing with companies that are still run by men. So it's still a little tougher.
So just staying on that latter topic there, companies run by men, or maybe for our viewers that will watch this later on, if you own a company, run a company, or in a senior level at a company, like, do you have any advice for women and men, for that matter, to, you know, how do you word this? Like, shine a light on sexism within that company, or maybe it's an industry related discrepancy, but like, how do you empower women to take on, to get the recognition really that I think that they deserve?
Yeah, it is hard for me to comment because my experience is only in residential, but my other half, I'm the better half, he's the other half, works for Canada's largest commercial real estate company. He sits on committees and boards, diversity committees. He's very involved in this, and that's how you do it. You basically have movements. They've come a long way. There are people working earnestly, men and women, to resolve this. But it's going to take some time still.
Thank you, Allison. Rosa, over to you. You kind of come from, you've had a mix of the of course the real estate world, but you've also had a taste of the corporate world, and like, kind of similar to what we've touched on with Allison. Have you, as a woman, have you experienced you know, some things in the workplace where you look back on it and there's some nuggets that the listener or viewer can take away, or something that stuck with you?
Yeah, so listening to Allison, you know, it's sad to say I don't feel much has changed from, you know, over the decades. It is challenging for women to exceed or to get respected, or, you know, to advance. It's you know, it's definitely a fight, a good fight, but it does come with some challenges. And just to also comment on, you know, Allison's role, you know, being the director of sales and having a team where it's predominantly women, it's, you know, I think it does help having a woman in that role, because, you know, because of those challenges, you need someone who can relate and have the experience, no matter what industry, whether it's corporate or real estate. There are, you know, it is still dominated by men. You know, the way women are viewed, you know, by society, or whether it's a client. I mean, we've had our own experience. Our agents had our own experience, have had their own experience with some, you know, clients with their view, you know, of women in real estate. So again, having Allison as the director of sales helps. And I think that's what makes our team, you know, successful, because of the, like, again, going back to the support that is given and provided to everyone. So yeah, it's sad to say that it really hasn't changed. You know, the corporate world, a lot of the men were in more powerful roles, so you do have to prove yourself a lot harder.
Yeah. You know, there's been, you know, I say this a bit tongue in cheek, but jokes made over the decades how women kind of get the the biological short end of the stick by default of being moms and having, you know, children. And where I'm going with this is I think of both of your partners. I happen to know a little bit about them. I've happened to personally spend time with them, and I've also seen them alongside each of you. And could you speak to, you know, this, and it comes back to that word support, but the support you get from your partner at home, with the role you play at work, and then of course the role that we all play at home. Like, what does that look like, Rosa? Like, can you elaborate or expand on any of that?
Definitely. I mean, it's not that it's not possible not having support at home to balance work and life, but it definitely helps. I know step one is, you know, having your significant other, your husband, believe in what you believe in. He knows how this, you know, the role that I take on to this team, how important it is for me. So, you know, knowing, for him to know that's important and for him to respect that, that's important to me makes a world of difference. And I know, and it does exist where the husband, you know, doesn't feel that the, you know, the wife or the girlfriend, the other partner, should, you know, spend this much time or hours or feel the career is that important. So, you know, there's always that pressure at home, you know, when are you going to be home? You know, your responsibilities at home, you know, whether it's direct, those comments, or indirect, a woman can feel that pressure if the husband isn't being supportive. So I don't have that pressure, and that makes a world of difference. And I couldn't do it if he didn't believe in what I believe or accept that this is important for me.
Thank you. And Allison, do you have anything to kind of add or share with the relationship you have with your partner there, your husband?
Yeah, I agree with what Rosa's saying, and I think I'm going to go on the assumption some people listening to this might be getting into real estate or into management. It's a discussion you have to have.
Good point, Allison.
If you're going to be in sales, it's a discussion you have to have with your partner, because they need to understand what level you want to be at, and what that means to you as a couple. You're a partnership, you're a team. There'll have to be a division of labor, and you know, it's okay to ask your partner for some help for things like that. But you definitely need the support, and I've had that from Scott in spades. You know, when I have to have had people in the living room before DocuSign on Thanksgiving, signing an offer while he's based in Turkey with a full house full of people. That's, you know, you have to have those discussions, and they have to be willing to chip in.
That's a good point, Allison. It doesn't just happen naturally. A discussion does need to be had, because the dynamics at home does change, especially for a salesperson whose hours are all over the place.
That's so well said. And I think, coming back to Allison, what you just said, that was an interesting point, that maybe I think men are the worst at this, but asking for help. It's okay to ask for help. There's a vulnerability that comes with that, which can be very hard. But it sounds like you're both saying that, I mean, ultimately the reward that comes from that is there. And I think of the word partner, like a husband or a wife or a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You know, ultimately you become a partner in life with that person. And then I think of your work, the work family, so to speak, like you become in a sense a partner with them as well. Like, Allison, can you build off of, like, is it easy to ask for help? Because I think there's going to be a lot of people listening that are going to go, yeah, I've kind of heard that before, and I know I should, but it's another thing to act on that. Like, how important is it to act on it, and what is the best way to go about that?
I think it's hugely important. I thought maybe it was just because of my age and how I grew up and what was, the gender roles back then. I took on a lot of the responsibility. So I thought maybe it was just me, and I felt like guilt and, should I be doing this? And kind of, not shame, but I felt like I was the one that had to take it all on, and I wasn't asking sometimes for help. And that was my own story, basically. But I've also talked to other women who are much younger, who have young kids, who are doing extremely well, and they're still having the same inner battle. Like, allowed to be successful. And if that means that you need to ask for some help, it's really important that you have those discussions.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, it goes back to every day is different. So, it's communication is important.
Yeah.
Rosa, can you expand on one of, I think, the trickiest words in the English dictionary, and that is the word communication, because there are many ways to communicate. Like, yeah, Allison, like what does that actually mean? Like, what are some tangibles that somebody could take into their relationship or work relationships in terms of good ways to communicate?
Oh yeah, you definitely, it's not just at home, but you're right, at work too. It's practice. It's, the more you communicate, the more comfortable you get, because you've learned how the other person reacts to how you express yourself. But it's a lot worse when you hold back and not, share what, whether it's your feelings or your challenges or asking for help. But you wouldn't be able to go further if you're not communicating. So you're going to be stuck. So just that alone motivates me to know that I can't stay, in the spot I am, whether it's again at home or at work. I need to say I need help, or I need to say, what's going on, and be able to talk it out and move forward.
Not let it fester and then you blow up.
So what does that mean, Allison? Because I know, don't want to make this one a personal one, but I'm terrible at that. Like, and I can't be the only one, right? So how do you kind of get the elephants out of the room so it doesn't fester?
I have to recognize what the real problem is. I think I have to understand that what I need and what I want is valid. I deserve to be able to ask for this. And then I have to understand, I guess, a whole other episode on how to communicate with someone of the opposite sex, because they are very different than we are. So
yeah, that's another good point. Again, it goes back to practicing and just trying it out.
So staying on that word communication, I had written down something, and I mean this, it's a negative word, but I mean it in a positive light, and that is confrontation in the workplace. So confrontation on the healthy side, I mean like disruption, healthy disruption, healthy disagreement, healthy debate. Like, is there a sexism about, have you come across that? And I realize I'm putting myself out on the line here because we've worked together for a while. Is that a struggle? Has it been a struggle in previous, employers or careers? Like, have you seen a struggle to communicate with people of, in management or senior positions?
Definitely. I mean, probably more in the corporate world. You're more careful as to what issues you bring up or what topics you want to speak about, because you don't realize you're worried about how it's going to affect your career. And again, it goes back to, there is a little bit of sexism because there's some, and I don't, it's not everywhere or every male, but, the respect level is different. So that it's a lot more challenging to communicate. And I think once you've, for me, it helps when I build a relationship first and there's that trust, it makes it a little bit easier to communicate. But it is in the back of my head always, how will this affect my career? How will I come across? Especially, being a new mom, I couldn't imagine the corporate world, because, being employed versus self-employed is very different. So, to ask for help, and how will that be interpreted, for example, if that was something that needed to be communicated.
Anything to add, Allison?
My only position I would say that was sort of corporate was with a company that took 6 interviews to hire me. And the only reason they hired me was because the manager tore the first page off the profiles, and they couldn't tell which was the man and which is the woman.
Oh, wow.
That was the only reason they hired me. There was a lot of it in that company, and I've never been in that position since. When I left there, I've always had the ability, I guess, or maybe I was just naive. I just said what was on my mind, and it was usually because I thought it was best for the situation or the company. But I've been very lucky with the environments that I've worked in. That has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, well, my reaction's similar to Rosa. I mean, I guess we shouldn't be surprised, but that's pretty bizarre to me that a cover letter with a male or female name can make that much of a difference. But that's why we're having this talk, because it's clearly something that is being, as Rosa has said, it's definitely still there, but there's not a week that doesn't go by that it doesn't seem to be in the newspaper, or even just some business related magazines. I'm careful not to use names, but if they're listening, it would be nice if they could touch on this a little bit more. I've just got a couple more kind of questions / topics before we begin to wrap up. But common denominators. I think are there common denominators that you see that in your current role, and what allows you to do very well and certainly excel at the roles that you're in? Are there common denominators that you see in yourself and other women that and have come across or admire in positions of leadership within companies? Is there common denominators you can touch on?
Yeah, actually, it kind of relates to the last question too, and the topic being women in real estate. I think why there are more women in real estate is because it is a lot more of a safer environment for them to be in, because it's not corporate. There's flexibility. You are self-employed. That's why you see a lot of women that whether they've already had their children, they want to get back into a career, why real estate is a choice for them. So I understand that, especially now more than ever, why more women want to be at home and have that flexibility, why you're seeing more women. So as our teams grow and how we're being, predominantly more women, I understand more why they're choosing this career for them.
Yeah, and if you want to be a high performer, if you're not in the corporate world, there's not that glass ceiling.
Right.
Or that corporate ladder you're climbing up and bumping into current positions. You basically are in charge of your own destiny, I guess. If you're perfecting your craft, if you're communicating with your spouse and dividing responsibilities and getting better and better at who you are, I've found that when I was going into a listing presentation, there are some people that are going to be more comfortable with a man. That's sort of on them. But I've won many because they liked who I was as a person. They were comfortable with my competency. And there's less of a barrier to be able to do that, I find, in residential real estate.
I agree. Another good point. Yeah.
Are there any things that you do consistently, whether it's in a day or throughout the course of a week, to kind of enhance your skill set or be more well-rounded as someone in business or even just a person? Are are there tools or resources that you look towards to, you know, better your craft, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, every single day in real estate, my eye is always on real estate, whether it's in my own backyard, you know, whether it's a friend or relative curious about what's going on in their neighborhood. I'm right on the board learning, you know, what's happening. It goes back to because it's my passion and I want to absorb as much knowledge. So, um, you know, the more that you know about what's happening in your backyard or your neighbor or your friends or family's backyard, the, you know, the more, you know, even respect that you're earned within your own sphere. So I rely on our real estate board daily to provide me with that knowledge. Books, I love reading, and actually in the past year I've turned to audiobooks because I find I can read more that way, and I can read it over and over again or listen to it over and over again. So I have it on when I'm driving, or I put my ear plugs in. So there's no excuse for me not to be able to read a book on, again, a topic that could relate in real estate or in my position, or even something for fun, just to, you know, relax yourself and change it up a bit. And then just being in real estate, you know, Rico's always throwing some, you know, courses at you. There's tons of seminars that you're able to attend. They provide so much knowledge, and if you really enjoy what you're doing, there's a ton of resources out there. So it really helps take advantage, you know, as much as possible to what's available.
And I think I do a lot of reading and learning about people and what motivates people, and you know, the different kinds of personalities, and that really helps me understand where some of the agents are coming from, what some of their strengths might be, their weaknesses, more about people. And I used to watch my husband, he reads a lot, and I used to say that you're always reading business books. And he said, no, start to read some of these, and not business, it's about people. And I learned so much from that, because, you know, managing people is quite complex and very rewarding when you see the aha moments and, you know, the lights go on. But
yes, I agree. It's very rewarding, especially seeing them to succeed or fulfill their own personal or business goal.
that's where I get my most pleasure out of what I'm doing right now, because I'm able to look at what people are doing as it's a journey. It's a, you know, a timeline, and you're not just in one spot. You're constantly changing and growing, hopefully. And when I see them improving and getting their wins, they're really happy, and that motivates me to keep learning more.
I'm hearing, I'll use a word that doesn't often get said a lot in the business world, that is love. But I'm hearing, like, it almost sounds like in order to be in a management type role, a senior leadership type role, am I hearing that you have to have a certain level of love, or you have to love people? Is that kind of what we're hearing?
And patience, should I say?
Yes, and patience.
Yeah,
Real estate's a people industry, definitely.
yeah. And the group that we have, I'm so happy to be part of it. They're strong women, very compassionate, and we do a lot of collaboration, and they have each other's backs, and that's really nice to see. That wasn't what I saw in real estate in my career. There wasn't, that's just different times. Like, again, that's a whole other episode, but very different times. And I find there's more mentorship now. There's more collaboration from, you know, the women that I'm experiencing on my team, and also my friends. They're more supportive of each other. We've definitely grown into that. We've had a few hiccups along the way with personality types that we decided that just don't work within our group. And I like where we're at now.
Allison, it almost, like, I think of some of the stereotypes we hear, and I mean, men are the worst. There's so many stereotypes we could pick on men for, but one of the more serious ones over the years that I've come across in my studies of people is, you know, women do need to support each other, and leaving the stereotypical gossip or stereotypical cattiness and whatever other adjectives you want to use. Do you think, like, is that real? Are those stereotypes real, and should women be cognizant of this?
Yes. And I've got to hope, you know, talking around our table the other night, this was brought up, and I've got to hope that the sort of younger generations, they just seem to have a little bit of a different spin on things, and maybe a little more supportive, where my mother's era, it was, you know, men ran everything and women were like that because they were pitting each other against each other. That's how they were able to survive and move up. And hopefully times have changed on that. The women are able to empower each other, encourage each other, mentor each other, and that's how you get more women into power positions.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can't imagine what it would have been like, you know, for me, you know, decades ago, trying to succeed in real estate, where you have, you know, your circle of friends who may have chosen this, you know, maybe stay at home route, not be able to relate and have no one to talk to. Having friends who are also trying to climb the ladder, who are very successful, that you can speak to, it makes a big difference. Definitely.
Just one final question, I suppose, before you, if you have anything else you want to add. Could you each take a minute to describe your version or your definition of success? What is your definition of success?
That's a great question. Maybe if you asked me this last year, it'd probably be different than this year.
Can you expand on that?
Pardon?
Can you expand on that?
Definitely. So, you know, success for me would have been, you know, more monetary. You know, being able to retire early. Matthew, you know that I've started to build a real estate portfolio at, you know, age 22, as soon as I was able to work and save up money. So, you know, I never really thought of how a family fit into that plan. Because that was all I had, you know, to focus on. I didn't have anything else to focus on. So to my definition of success would have been, you know, certain number of homes, or, you know, so much put away for retirement. That to me would have, you know, been a wow. I was able to do that. So now success is, you know, being happy, keeping my family happy, you know, being able to, you know, balance everything. So doesn't mean I still can't have those goals, but I'm looking at them a lot differently, whether they may take a little longer to achieve or just have to slightly change it up. I'm willing to do that now, where I never even thought of about that before. And also having a partner, again, going back to being supportive of my goal, I'm able to also bring him in on that. So now my success looks a little different.
Very cool. It's, yeah, Allison, anything to, do you have a definition that you wouldn't mind sharing?
Well, I think success is deeply personal to everyone, and that's where that whole having it all coming. My having it all is going to be likely different than somebody else's. It was to survive. I was a single mother for a long time, doing things on my own. So my definition of success was basically just keeping my head above the water. And, you know, now it's much like Rosa, being able to be happy, feel like I'm contributing, I'm staying in balance. I want to have enough time that I can devote to things I want to do with my home, around the home, with my family, and also be part of building something like the Regan Team.
I agree. It's quite fulfilling when you're able to achieve those little small victories.
Yeah, and I think you have to celebrate those small victories, because I always looked at it like, you know, work-life balance. It's not static, it's fluid, and you've got plates, you know, those plates spinning. You think you've got them all spinning, and then something happens like COVID, and you go, what, wait, hold on. Or
Oh, yeah, that's a big adjustment. Yeah.
kid gets the chicken pox. You're like, wait, no, I had all this organized. So
Yeah, so I guess it goes back to what I was saying. Now I know that every day is different. It's always a surprise.
That's awesome. Do you kind of have any, as we're going to close out here, and maybe before you kind of give any final thoughts that you might have, would it be okay if anybody is, when people are watching this next week, a year from now, do you have a problem with if anybody were to reach out to you, it could maybe in an email or a phone call? Would that be okay? If they had any questions?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Again, it goes back to the support for sure. Having, talking to someone that can relate. Feel free to share my contact information.
Okay. Any final thoughts as we wrap up here?
I would just say to women that are listening, figure out what you want your business to look like. Communicate with your partner, treat it like a business, continue to work on your craft, work on yourself as a person, grow, believe you deserve to succeed.
Yes, believing.
Yep. You're going to have those inner conflicts. Don't waste any time on shame, guilt, and all that. Do your best and celebrate the wins, and be kind to yourself.
Oh, that's a good point, to be kind. That's one thing that I've learned, that it's not going to be perfect. No. So, when you look at someone else in that, in that role that maybe could be, your role model, on the outside, it always looks like they have it all together, but realistically, they don't. Like I said, some days I can't shower or eat properly, but on the outside, it looks like, wow, she got all her work done. But that was definitely a challenge. So it's really important to, for real estate, I would say to stay persistent, keep that passion alive. So it goes back to believing in yourself, your goals, knowing that you can do it. I think it's really, really important. Yeah, don't do it for the money. You gotta really enjoy what you're doing.
That's fantastic. Thank you. To the both of you. I mean, I think yet again, I'm reminded at least how lucky we are to have you. And I think I'll just leave on some advice for anybody that's watching this, male or female, who is in a senior level within a company. Maybe you own the company. Sometimes you don't have to look too far to find somebody that can fill maybe a missing link or replace a broken link, as opposed to, say, looking outside of your company. You, like the Regan team, may actually just have somebody down the hallway. It just never occurred to you until maybe now. So thank you to Rosa, and yeah, Allison, go ahead.
And ladies, don't be afraid to speak up.
Yes.
You got role, ask for it.
That's so true. If you don't ask, you don't get. We have somebody just as of Tuesday that stepped up to the plate, and she plays such a vital role within our company, but she's taking, quite a giant leap to advance her young career, and it's super cool. And I busted her chops for it. I'm like, what took you so long? Like, if this has been on your mind, to Allison's point, like, you gotta get it out there. You gotta get it out there. So on that note, guys, we've gotten this out there, and I hope it helps just one, if not, many more people. And if we don't hear from you, that's okay. But maybe now you're a little more cognizant. Now you can do something to better your workplace, or if you're a spouse at home, a partner at home, hopefully you've got a different idea of what your partner does throughout their day. So thanks again. We appreciate this, Allison and Rosa.
No problem. Happy to do it.
Absolutely.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.